Welcome, everybody, and we will start to give time to everybody to join us with a little short video about the caring economy. Let's see if you see the whole thing. Here we go. So thank you, everybody. And now I think we have a lot of people online. Thank you for joining us and welcome for this amazing webinar. This is our Women for Solutions 177th webinar, where we connect, we create awareness, and we inspire to action to regenerate our world. I am Laura Jadaru, co-founder of Women for Solutions, a global network of thousands of women and men, entrepreneur in more than 40 countries, where we share simple, effective, and scalable solutions towards a caring economy, a system, very simple, that values the key importance in wellness of people and nature. This is our 9th webinar on a series called Legacy of Mary Magdalene, Her Positive Impact Then and Today. Today, we'll continue to explore the historical facts and new discoveries in the last 50 years of Mary Magdalene and all the antique texts that have been found in Greece and in Turkey and in Egypt. And we're going to focus on Mary Magdalene, GDP, and the basic economic principles of the Gnostics. Our two amazing scholars of today are Elsie, Maio, and Neela, Bhattacharya, Saxena. So we will discuss the incongruous concept and about the country success metrics of GDP used for more than 100 years. And we believe that through the iconic feminine principles that we'll discuss today, this shift that we have discussed in these 9 webinars, and today you will hear it in live for the next 92 minutes, can be done. So we welcome Elsie Maio, a transformative figure in the realm of corporate strategy, blending business acumen with a profound commitment to human values and societal well-being, with a groundbreaking steeped in rigorous Wall Street and consulting giants like McKinsey and Company. She has forged a path that integrates profit-driven strategies with a deep understanding of human-centered values. Her career trajectory from pioneering company consultant to founding Soul Branding SM, where both speakers work with, reflect her dedication to aligning corporate behavior with social values profitably. Through her firm, established more than 30 years ago, she has guided progressive company leaders towards realizing tangible benefits such as record retention rates with employee engagement, enhanced brand legacy, and international leadership position in environmental sustainability. Dr. Neela Bhattacharya Saxena is also a speaker today, is a devoted scholar, author of several amazing books, deeply immersed in the Gnostic tradition, particularly centered on the reverence to Mary Magdalene and the historic role of women, religion, and ancient history. She's a professor of women and gender studies at Nassau Community College, City University of New York, As mentioned, Dr. Xena is a prolific author, and her must-read books, Absent Mother, God of the West, A Kali-loving lover's journey into Christianity and Judaism, and many others. As well, she has spanned her array of topics ranging from AI as awakening intelligence of Buddhism and film Her. So another, alongside her academic pursuit, that is, as you see, very prolific, she has maintained a thorough-provoking blog titled Understanding Under the Mother Principles. On this note, please welcome our amazing speakers of today, Elsie and Neela. Big applause to these ladies.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Laura. So I'm honored to be here. And I acknowledge that as I look around at this room, and this is a room, what I see are people who are committed to creating a better world for everyone. I come to you as a peer in that regard, that we are all change agents, and that we have been, and to acknowledge that, I'm sorry, there's a thing coming on here, to acknowledge that in each of every one of you, there is something burning that says, we've got to change things, and we're going to do it collectively, which is part of the reason why you're here. It's very important for us to be collective at this point in time, because for all of the things that we've accomplished, and as I look at you, I know that there have been pioneers here in models for generative finance, for education of the whole being, for values integration, bringing them alive in companies, for environmental energy innovations, for talent development and talent that is responsive and generative in their organizations. I'm looking at every one of you that I know, and you're pioneers. And I know it's because there's a fire in your heart. And it's time for us to actually, I believe, up our game. We've developed models, we've tested them. For the past 30 years, there's been a lot of progress in the sustainability movement, and we're at a precipice. I say this just to activate us and your learning edge and your appetite, because there's a momentum building now, and it's a momentum that's accelerated by AI, which is essentially taking the old paradigm, that old, maximize profit, exploit and extract, that whole mental model. And AI has learned that, and it is driving it right directly into past social media. Social media is no longer necessary to promote and embed the predominant culture. So I speak to you today as a call to action. And the call to action will come down to what Neela will delve into more deeply, and I will just mention as an element in the kind of opportunity, challenge, and steps that we have to take. And Neela will focus on the depth of it, which is our felt experience of alignment with the web of life. And as we're going along, I think it's really important for you to know who's in the room. These are people who have pioneered in responsible investing and made a huge success of it for their sectors. So we're looking at movement leaders in this room. And I asked everyone to be generous and indicate in the chat where you are, what your focus is, what you're looking for now, what you're leaning into, what your edge is, and what your expertise is, so that we can all connect as you wish to do that. So after I go through this model that I'm going to share with you of change, then we'll have a little break, and then Neela will go into depth about the particular aspect of this that we are invited to embrace now more deeply, which is this felt alignment with the system. And then we'll open it up to questions, and we're here for as long as you want for questions. So, okay. So I invite you, can you see my slide, or are you seeing the notes
See this
page?
slide, but we need to put it full screen. It's the left button. Or the right, sorry, the right button to put it full screen. At this point, we see all the other slides on the left side.
You do see the other slides, okay,
So you have to,
okay.
there you go, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So part of what we're talking about here, and the question that we're asked to address is, how quickly can the feminine principle inform capitalism? And I'm interpreting Mary Magdalene and all of the mythology and scholarship and truth about that person. I'm using her in this model as a surrogate for what we'll call the feminine principle, because I don't want to get confused with an individual. Although, as Neela will go into depth, she does embody what I'm talking about here as the feminine principle. And in terms of GDP, GDP is represented in this beautiful image by the pale screen that's going up, as GDP does, which is gross domestic product as a surrogate for the well-being of an economy, continued growth, etc. And the beautiful image that was created by Jim Quallick, who interpreted the intent of my message here, is that it is the life force, the feminine principle, the thriving web of life that is obscured by this drive to maximize profits and continuously grow through consumer economies. I also bring it to your attention because of the momentum of the backlash currently against what we'll call progressive economies or progressive initiatives. And it is a strong backlash that it behooves us to do something that we haven't really done too well before. And that is to influence the zeitgeist. What do I mean by that? Social media, we know that social media has been identified as a driver of polarization, of misinformation, and in short, noise and confusion. And that is an inhibitor to moving forward into your heart, moving forward into a sense of shared destiny in its own. And we have not effectively countered that. So I'm thinking about the sustainability movement, for example. When I think about the past 25 years or so, when we were, for example, when I worked with John Elkington, who coined that phrase and popularized it. And he was committed to expanding sustainability as a more like a think tank into a catalyst for transformation. And it was at that point that we worked with him to help reposition his organization. But looking back, we were not very effective as a movement in building support for the implementation of a new mindset, of a new view of the world, of a new worldview. And I think that we're suffering the consequences now of that, because in the absence of an alternative to GDP, if you will, people are confused and they're reverting back to where fear takes you, which is a desire for certainty and strongmen. So I think that our job now, having been great tool makers and refiners of, how to implement circularity in physical things, we need to up our game and look at how we're going to win, pardon the metaphors, hearts and minds. Okay, so I'm not looking at the chat, but if there are any particular questions that are coming up there that you think we want to answer, please let me know,
Looking at
Laura.
the chat all the time. And I
Okay,
don't see them even.
so what is GDP and why does it matter, and why would it have any relationship with the Magdalene or the feminine principle? Well, GDP, what a society considers valuable or what's worth, what matters gets measured. And so GDP and its ilk, I'm not saying GDP particularly, but the system where we put our attention and what we measure is how fast the economy is growing, how profitable it is, et cetera. And that, first of all, the GDP as an indicator lacks internal integrity because it doesn't measure everything it says it does. And secondly, it's misleading because it really doesn't reflect the condition of people or of economies. So here's an illustration of how GDP lacks internal integrity. This is something that was conceived and executed by the late, great Hazel Henderson. This being her birthday month, especially happy to bring this right up front, because way back when, and I guess it says 1992, Hazel saw that GDP leaves out about a half of what actually constitutes the economy. And it's the half that is not paid. The social cooperative love economy, she used to call it. You can see on the left side. And that's the value that's generated without pay. It is the caretaking. It is, in particular, things that women have done historically. So when we talk about, this relationship of women and the feminine principle, it can get a little squeegee because it is connected in many ways, but it's not exclusive to women. And then again, the other aspect that was left out is the value that is generated into the economy and its ability to make things and sell things of nature. And because those two have been left out of our gaze, those are the two that are right now suffering the most. And we're seeing the dislocation and the results of such imbalance. Because the reality is that we live in a closed system, not in a world of infinite resources. I don't need to tell you this, but you know it. But the model is a mechanistic model that GDP is associated with. It's been referred to as financial fundamentalism, maximize growth. How would you recognize it? The prime directive is to maximize growth, profits, and concentrate them. Individuality, exclusivity, othering, and transactional. So these are some of the characteristics that obviously you're familiar with. But the other thing that you saw from that layer cake is that profit gets privatized, but risk gets distributed to the commons, to the people. You know, the risk of abuse of just extracting from nature. Who pays for that? Well, nature and the public. We're paying for it in the imbalance in the climate and in the extreme weather conditions, etc. So again, I say that that image that we created of the feminine principle and the felt sense of humanity it's brokenhearted right now. And I want to acknowledge that because all of us coming here are coming here with an intention. We see how life could be better on earth. We have an idea of that, and we're committed to it and we're devoted to it. But our hearts are broken. And we also need to acknowledge that. And it's not just our hearts that are broken. I'm talking about the zeitgeist. You know, I mean, there's the wars, the polarization that's happening politically, the extraordinary fragility of economically of not only most people, but the majority of people, in sharp contrast to the extraordinary concentration of wealth. This imbalance in a system that is a living system that seeks equilibrium will not stand. So that's why I say we're at a precipice. The living system itself is at a threshold of tolerance, both socially and physically. And it's exacerbated by a sense of betrayal of our institutions. You know, we talk about the loss of trust. It's appropriate. It's absolutely appropriate. And I'll use the sustainability movement as an example. For 25 years, companies have been presenting their greenness, their sense of responsibility, how they're listening to stakeholders, attention to the ecosystem, or even in a performative way, claiming to be sustainable when in fact it's just one gesture, one product line, one business unit that may be doing that, while behind the scenes, millions are going into lobby against laws that would make that the norm. The sense of betrayal is enormous and appropriate. And the zeitgeist is ill-equipped to self-resource in market world. Where do you go for a sense of comfort and stability? So I think this is what we're facing. And I also think that it's going to accelerate because the old way of doing things, the old processes and the old mindsets of driving profit, et cetera, getting away with whatever you can get away with will be exacerbated, as I said earlier, as AI pumps it literally into everything, for journalists, for scholarship. That what it's learned is the old way. So I'm feeling an urgency about that. And I invite you and I request that you think about this and take it to heart, because together we need to figure out how to deal with it. For example, in journalism, optimizing language models for dialogue. I mean, even in the way that we would be talking to each other, continuing to promote othering, bias, et cetera. And there's this particular analysis refers to the old way of doing things that I was talking about, refers to it as biases generated by male-dominated data sets, programmers. Just imagine this, picture the work, you know, who's creating the stuff that we consume. They all are going to be receiving AI and already are. So the momentum And the thing that really struck me is that it's going to bypass social media. We can't even turn off social media or start discernment there. If you're as alarmed as I am, I'd like to know, and if you're not, I'd really like to hear your point of view. It's a mechanical worldview. And, you know, I'm going to say that, you know, we refer to it as the me model. And I would lump in there and ask us to be really discerning. This is another skill that, and I would ask us to amp up, to be discerning of what we've assumed because of the labels we've put on them are actually generative for the system. I am a skeptical optimist. I've seen too many decisions made in boardrooms and the rationale for them and how they play out in the world, not to be a skeptical optimist. And it's up to us who are at the leading edge in terms of our commitment to hone our gaze and distinguish between what is performative in terms of sustainability or impact and what actually is generative of the system. Because it's going to balance itself out. You know, the living system will find equilibrium. Perhaps it will, you know, as the icebergs melt and desalinate the ocean, that's going to change the currents. And one of them that will be affected is the Gulf Stream. So as the Gulf Stream slows down, it's not going to get all the way up to Northern Europe. And what will that do to the temperatures there? So thinking in terms of system rather than making immediate adjustments that are more like Band-Aids. So the truth is that if reality is a complex web of interdependent systems, then what is there for us to do? Because so far, we've been acting like it's not. We've been acting like it's a closed system, it's mechanical, and we can dominate, we can legislate, we can predate on those who just don't have the strength to fight back. So what I'm suggesting is that we think about everything that we're doing individually. And as I said, you are in whole student education, you are in generative finance, that we shift our gaze and make sure that the game we're playing is to support this dynamic thriving of the web of life. What's it going to take to get there? We're going to have to learn how to deal with the system. And those system skills are very different. I don't know that we've made very much progress in understanding the dynamics of living systems. But that's what's in front of us. We also need the will to align with reality. And this is where I think the zeitgeist and our role there comes to the fore. That there's not a collective will to actually shift our goals yet. And that would show up, for example, in the new metrics that might be used. And then, of course, to apply, make sure that the resources are applying to close that gap. One of the skills that I think we need to up our game regarding is discernment. It's very easy. Christine is raising her hand. Can we let Christine say something here?
Herself, she wants to make a comment.
Elsie, Thank you so much for all your wisdom showering over us. For now or for later, but I want to put it right now in front of you. What would be a good benchmark for us for the whole system ideology? Yeah? Can you take that with you?
Yes, yes. And this is part of, thank you, Christine. This is part of what needs to be developed. It's a system of systems. I think that there are questions of fluid dynamics that, we're not fully capable of dealing with. When I look at them, at which models seem to make more sense, they cluster. One of them is R3.0. If you look at them, we can talk about them in more detail in the Q&A. But there are some, and we can talk about those. But none is perfect yet. And this notion of discernment is we've got to look at everything that emerges and bring our own intuitive sense to it, which is where Neela's talk is going to go. That it just doesn't work anymore to assume because something has the right label on it. If it says whole system dynamic benchmark, maybe, but I think we all need to be skeptical optimists, and we need to bring it to everything now because of the urgency. But yeah, we'll talk about those. And this is another example, McKinsey, for example, will talk about economic inclusion as if, and what is that a metric of? For example, there could be greater economic inclusion, but because of the bias against certain groups that are inherent in government services or advantages in access to credit, that the economic inclusion metric would not amount to anything. So this is what I mean about taking a system view, stepping back from our expertise. In this case, McKinsey is talking about economic inclusion. We have to be skeptical optimists because we don't know what we don't know about system dynamics. And we're going to have to keep checking with each other. By that, I mean, if there's an attempt to include more of a certain group in economic benefits, for example, Jamie Dimon said, okay, I think the rich should be taxed more, as if that were a solution, as if that were a metric. How about saying, I think that every human being should have the dignity of a roof over their heads or the means to achieve it, to accomplish it, provide that for their family, and have a healthy body and mind. How about that as a metric? And you may say, that's too complex to even consider. Guess what? That's something for AI to do. Why don't we program that into AI and give it something useful to do and identify what are the thresholds of human well-being in these circumstances and respond that way. So I'm not saying it's all doom and gloom. I think that we could figure this out. And when we do, it's going to be like a moonshot. Can you imagine understanding how to keep a body healthy, how to engage in education as an integrated activity in such a way that it maximizes the well-being of the children and those they come into contact with? Think of all what we've dreamed of and put AI to use that way to identify those dimensions. So I am an optimist and I am skeptical because the momentum of the old way of thinking is hard to resist. Now, yes, this is a this is a more useful way to think about it, rather than grow profits and manufacturing, buying and selling. How about if we use as a measure of well-being a sense of, are we in like good thresholds relative to each other? By each other, I mean the pieces of the living system. Here is Kate Rayworth's wonderful insight and model about identifying thresholds. I'm not going to go into this in detail now. We can talk about it in the Q&A if you'd like. But I offer this to you as something to be encouraged about on the way to learning how to engage with a living system. And when you engage with the living system, it's a dynamic balancing act. It's a yin and yang, because it's always ebbing and flowing, right? It's a mutual exchange, which is part of the finesse of it. And I bring this up because, again, it is, I think that particularly corporate posing as being beneficial, as caring in particular, which it has done, invested billions in doing through the sustainability movement, has really shattered trust, and appropriately so. There's a very interesting piece, this coy look on this woman's face as she represents the corporation, basically saying, now, I think we should fight the power. I'm the power, so I'm going to suggest to you, let's do it. Let's do it. If you look at this article, which I recommend you do, it's as if she's speaking all the brand messages of the whole sustainability movement. And she's the corporation. And that, I think, is a source of this betrayal, which is appropriate. To restore trustworthiness, I think it's a function of governance. And this is another skill for us to hone as we discern. Balancing the promise with the perceived delivery by the person who's receiving it. Now, why do I bring this up now? Because I think that we have an obligation not only to use this model when we look at not only what we're saying, but what we're doing. But as we address this question of the zeitgeist, how do we talk about what we're hoping to replace the old broken way with, if we don't find a way to agree on what is the ambition and what are the signposts that we're delivering it? Part of the whole system skills, this is part of whole system skills that we have yet to develop fully. In my work over the past, since 1999, we've been doing this in a way for corporations that helps them identify from the heart of the employee what they value most and where that might meet the company values. And in so doing, it helps the organization to direct itself in a way that is internally cohesive and also pro-social, pro-environmental, and generative. We have failed to do this at a significant level because, in spite of tools like this, and it's possible to know and get readings on soft issues like values because of a technology of translating them into behaviors that are and metrics. It's possible to do it. We've done it. Our clients have done it. But what the fail comes in the will. And this is where I think, again, it's part of our job to cultivate that will. In terms of cultivating system skills, that's why we partner with organizations that stay in the company to help them transform, because it is an inside-out job. And as I said, it was hard learning because, you know, you can, an organization can have all the good intentions, get all the good tools, get all set up, and then the will kind of fritters because the transformation is not superficial, it is deep and it is heart-centered. We don't need to see these. Okay. So you know what? There are some great stories about this working. And one of them is Mandy Cabot and her husband, Peter, who you all may know associated with a company called Dansko, a shoe company. They started out making clogs. And Mandy and Peter conceived this company as a generative force in the community and in the industry. And one of the things that they did was their headquarters was pioneered in terms of environmental building. But the enduring thing they did is that when they decided that they were ready to retire, they didn't sell the company. And this is where governance is so important. Who owns it will decide where it goes and where its heart is. Does it have the heart of a machine in the old tradition, or does it have a heart that beats with the web of life? Mandy and Peter's hearts do, and they have done their best to support that in their companies. So instead of selling Dansko, which is very successful, they converted it into an employee-owned company. So when you think about your gaze, your own gaze, and you think about, I've got a company, it's a corporation, it's about profits, got to maximize profits, right? Even though I make environmentally safe cleaning products, it's a company. I've got to maximize profit. That's where you want to look at your gaze and say, am I wearing the mechanical gaze, or am I in the web of life looking at what is the impact on the ownership of this company when we're gone? Now they have gone to Belize, and so they retired, and you know, for them, retirement was starting something new. And they have revitalized an organization, a company called Silkgrass Farms. And, you know, I think when we were talking, they noticed that there was a wonderful, I'm doing a little time check here. I don't even know what time it is here. Okay. I think I'm going too long here.
Maybe we have another minutes.
Okay. Silkgrass Farms. So being who they were, they saw this magnificent natural forest. And they also saw that the increasing appetite for development, real estate development, and it looked quite vulnerable to them. They also, so they looked at it as a system. Now, could they have perhaps raised funds and protected it with a foundation? Perhaps, yeah. What interests me is that they looked at the whole system, at the people who live there, at the lack of employment, and saw an opportunity to bring business in service of this thriving web of life. So this is a model that they posted, and they call it How Silkgrass Farms Supports a Circular Economy. Notice the imagery, circular versus driving. This is another thing to keep in mind when we think about our shifting gaze and the role I'll talk about in a minute of art. and those of you who are in the arts in this room are playing a really essential role when you move into this mix in an integrated way. Okay, which brings me to this point, that if we're going to move from this kind of what John Perkins calls a death economy to what he calls a life economy, it's going to be aligning with our heart. It's going to be aligning with a felt sense of humanity. In business terms, you can call it system identity. I mean, there are a lot of different words for it, but it comes down to feeling the interconnectedness with life, all of it. And from there, the will comes, we'll learn the skills, we'll align the resources, and that's what we hope for the zeitgeist. Moreover, when you are in your heart and connected to your sense of being one with, there's a wisdom of the heart. I think there's, Heart Math is one of those institutes that's demonstrating that. And there are so many that you all know about. I'm not here to dive into those now. We could do that later or in a workshop. But I want to elevate it all and aggregate it to say where we need to focus. And it is in this felt sense of humanity. And that is what the Magdalene represents. And how will you know? Like, what metrics would you use if you put on the gaze of a living system and you were an organization that was making food or producing food, and you wanted to know, how should I price this food in this market? How should I price it? What does it actually cost the buyer to buy my product? And here's a company with that gaze of the whole life system, looked at the cost of a meal in terms of the impact on the one who would be buying and making it, which was the woman. And this was done in a part of Africa. The cost of a meal for her was she's going to spend a third of her income on fuel to cook that food. She can't go to school because she's too busy in the process of doing that. Her health suffers because of the fumes that are coming in. She spends 7 hours a day on trips back and forth to get wood to fuel the fire. She often has to go at night because that's when the children are sleeping or when it's cooler, and the incidence of rapes are a very big risk. And then there's deforestation. So the reason why I'm showing this to you is to show you the gaze of living system. When you are living system, when you identify with it, you will start to look at your business activities from a more complete, holistic way. And finally, when we talk about what moves the heart, and let's face it, decisions come from emotions, and data supports them. And the heart of the current system is represented in different icons. One of them is Mercury. Mercury is the god of commerce. This is Mercury on top of a municipal building in Europe. Mercury is on top of a lot of municipal buildings, saying this city is about commerce. But he's also the god of thieves. So when you think about what is holding us back from a more generative worldview and generative approach to economy and society, it's deep in our psyche. It's in our mythology. And this is the role, I think, of art today, to shake us up out of that, to provide alternatives. Do you remember Bucky Fuller said, if you want to change people, don't tell them to change, just show them something better. And this is part of, I think, what art can do. And I know we have artists in the room and we have filmmakers in the room who are doing this. Collectively, can we please put something together to influence the zeitgeist? This is, I don't need to explain it, Cindy Sherman. And she illustrated the letter E in a book of Stella McCartney, the fashionista, Stella McCartney's book of brand values, attempting to help people relate and internalize through art. And this is one of my neighbors, Britta Ikonen, a woman who spends half of her year about immersed, that's her, in the cultures, in the cultures at the fringes of Northern Europe. Remote areas, few population, and studying and experiencing what life is like when you are immersed in the living system and documenting it. She and her colleague, Annie Kolinga, published books. This one is from the book, Eyes Wide Open. What is it to be living system? What is it to explore that and feel that on a visceral level? And finally, when we talk about our challenges, I think, and in addition to skills to develop, it is deepening our own hearts and our own sense of love and oneness and unity. That is something that will affect everything, even as Black Elk says here, geopolitics. But the greatest of these skills, the greatest of these levers for change is love. And that brings us back to the feminine principle and the Magdalene and my dear friend, Neela.
Thank you very much, Elsie. This was really inspiring. And there are a few questions, but I think we should go ahead with Neela's presentation. Is that okay? So that we can continue with the talk. Okay. Oops.
I also would like to say it's great to see that you all are putting in the chat who you are, what you care about, and de facto, what you can contribute to this collective effort. Thank you.
We'll all put it out, and when we send an email with the recording and all the information and all the websites you have mentioned, we will try to create a group of action as well. I think there's a lot to be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Neela, the line is all yours.
Okay. Well, thank you, Elsie, for this incredibly in-depth presentation. And thank you for inviting me to this August gathering here. And I also want to thank Catalina for helping us get here. And Laura, amazing invitation. I must say, I know very little. I'll probably go into a very different direction here, but I need to know how much time we really have.
Half an hour to,
oh, that's it. Okay, all right.
45 minutes, and then we'll open to questions.
Okay. Okay.
Actually, we have 60 minutes. We said we were going to do it 2 hours, so we have 60 minutes to finish.
Oh, okay. All right. So let me, you can stop me when you think I need to stop. Okay, so I'm going to start sharing my screen. So, okay. So can you all see it? All
yes.
Right. So I will begin by holding this red egg. Those of you who are familiar with Mary Magdalene, you know that is, I picked it up in one of the Mary Magdalene churches during my travels, which is a symbol of transformation. So everything that Elsie has been talking about, there are other dimensions to this that we need to see. And these pictures that I picked up from the internet help me. And I'm very grateful to the internet. And they're very evocative about what has happened to us and where we need to go from here. So, but before I talk, I want to dedicate this talk to my mother, the supreme image of contentment and desire for knowledge. She just recently passed away. I'm still in mourning. She was close to 99. And without her, I wouldn't be where I am. All my learning, music, literature, love, everything came from her love of travel. My father, a Kali worshipping, amazing father who gave me the confidence to be a whole human being. But I do want to dedicate this talk to my recently deceased mother. Her name is Shyamala Bhattacharya. So, what I'm doing here, I am putting this tantric gaze at the Magdalene. So this is the overall idea that I have here. Mary Magdalene, the emblematic Shakti of Jesus, was banished by the patriarchal church, even though it gave lip service to Mother Mary. This led to the severance from the cosmic plenitude inherent in the feminine principle, a devastating consequence for humanity dominated by imperial Christianity. We have been denuding the planet and facing psychospiritual illnesses. So this presentation from a tantric perspective will look at the erroneous theology of a prosperity gospel that created the perpetual scarcity mindset of hungry ghosts. In resurrecting the Magdalene within us, we can contribute toward a planetary regeneration. So, I like this. In my writing classes, I use this, and my students have to see because of my subject for my composition classes. It's food. So here is this pyramid, a terrible future pyramid. So look at this carefully. At the bottom, there are microplastics, and at the top, antidepressants. This is where we have arrived through what is called the Anthropocene, that is the human impact on this thing that Elsie called the living systems. And we are part of it. So right now, so this is one path. This is a 2030 scary food pyramid. Or every crisis is also in an opportunity or a glorious awakening, a quickening, since Elsie used the word quick. I am using the quickening in the sense of, new birth, quickening of new birth. So the planeted humanity under the Anthropocene, or rising of the anthropos, the full human, which is very deeply ingrained in the Gnostic tradition that I have been very grateful to be participating in. So now I want to present this, that whether people believe in religions or not, religious perspectives affect how we see reality, nature, animals, vegetation, life, and death. So at this crucial juncture in our collective history, when we have begun to see our interdependent universe, it is helpful to see how the depth dimensions of religion speak to each other. So I grew up with this fierce goddess Kali. And actually, as an English professor, I never thought I will start talking about, my private connection with the Divine Mother. But when I came here many, many years ago, more than 3 decades ago, and I realized that there was no understanding of the Divine Mother. And Divine Mother, this Kali, the fierce goddess, I call her pregnant nothingness. Now, as I started to explore the culture and religions, since I am also a religion scholar and I explore all the worlds, primarily the esoteric or the hidden dimensions, when I looked at this image, very famous image, and had conversations with people who actually practice, and you can see that this god actually is held by a feminine figure behind, which I was told is wisdom. So in the depth dimension, there is this thing that I call the mother principle. And it is this mother principle that's leading me to this quest and a query about who we really are. And since we have talked, Elsie had very in detail presented about the wealth and GDP and the problem with it. The question is, what is real wealth? And as this little thing says, your real wealth can be measured not by what you have, but by who you are. So the thing is that if we do not know who we are, then we are walking into whatever area we are operating in completely blind and unconscious. So the real wealth, if it is the self, and of course, from know thyself to the Indian traditions about finding out who we really are and our connection with the cosmos, it is about deep, deep wisdom. And I call it gynosis to using what I call the gynocentric traditions, which is also the word in Sanskrit is pragya, which is beyond knowledge. So we have to understand, I'll talk a little bit about the hungry ghost soon, but how we can acknowledge the hungry ghost within us, how to find a way out of the Anthropocene, and how the feminine principle epitomized in the Magdalene can help us avoid diseases of despair. Since I teach at a community college and we have constant conversation about mental health issues, it is an epidemic. And these are called by somebody diseases of despair in a country which is full of so many resources, apparently one of the most powerful, wealthiest country in the world. So we need to face these things so that we can live a life attuned to the earth's magic, where, since I'm a literature person, I love Kim Stanley Robinson's work. In one of his works, he says, enough is a feast. So with this, how did we get here? So exclusive patriarchal monotheism, prosperity gospel to AI. It's all part of this control mechanism, which has led to excesses and our robotization through fear of everything that we call body. Mater is mother. We call it matter, but at the root is the word mater. I have done this in my classes and I have found my students respond beautifully to this idea. I had told them, I developed a course called The Goddess in World Religions, that when you do not see the word mater in matter, then you actually fall into materialism, which is simply stuffism, unconsciously being attached to a consumerism, which is consuming ourselves. Now, what is the ideology behind that? Now, you can look at the religious ways, and every world religion has some aspect of this. So fallen and sinful earth to scientific atheism. You can see that if you think that the earth is a sinful place, and of course, the blaming the quote unquote Eve for that, at least in some reductionist reading of the text, then it's perfectly fine if it gets destroyed. Now, on the other hand, actually scientific atheism, not science, which is a search for truth, and it's creating amazing things every day. But it is this aspect where you go to the other end, when you completely denude the earth of everything that we call spirit, because spirit is connected with the reductive religion, oppressive religion. Then what happens? It is the scientist who takes on this godlike stance, rejecting the all-seeing eye of a judging Father God. And then he desacralizes the cosmos and makes it his playground. Dissects animals who, according to Cartesian postulates, have no res cogitans and hence do not suffer. It's a whole history. I teach history of ideas in my classes, but I'm not going there. But what is interesting is a belief in a purely transcendental deity ironically leads to absurd and abstract consumerist ideologies. And what do I mean by that? Abstraction is nothing grounded. If everything good is somewhere else, in the future somewhere, whether in a heaven or some sort of scientific utopia, we are falling into a kind of abstract mentalism. And that is what is driving us. So much of our life today, and I do some experiments in my classes, where we see that we have put everything that we fear at the bottom of a hierarchically organized, dualities. So, okay, if you easily understand God as male, white, all kinds of good things above, and everything bad, female, body, matter, hell, This is a, hierarchically organized thing, and we have learned to suppress and oppress what we call the body. And the earth, even though call her Mother Earth, it is feminized and it is exploited. So what are the hungry ghosts then? But we have to understand we have done this collectively. And why have we done that? The idea of growth actually is connected with our understanding of a part in us that wants to expand. It is this expansive self that wants to explore, right? It wants to explore. It has this need to find something beyond. What is my limit? And we keep doing this, doing this, doing this. Now, the hungry ghosts are coming from the Tantric tradition, both Buddhist and the Hinduist. These are entities that have very thin necks, huge bellies. They are living in the middle of plenty and cannot enjoy anything. That's what a hungry ghost is. So we have to recognize that the hungry ghost within us. And without judging, let that hungry ghost leave or completely dissolved. Now, what has happened here that are very strange ways through this, the way history operates, there has been this, in some ways, a weird marriage of imperialism, capitalism, and manipulated scripture. Since I go and study the depth dimensions, I realize that's not what the scripture is saying, but an aspect in us, which is a control mechanism that has created this delusion and craving. Never happy, never content with anything. So the opposite of expansion, or the other side of expansion, is contraction. That is going within. If you look at this mandala that I put on the right side, which is also a balanced cross, the Celtic cross, where you find that you have to go outside and you have to come inside. So from this hungry ghost mentality, self-destructive thing, we have to move to this mandala where we go inside. Instead of expanding, now it is time to contract within ourselves and regenerate. So even though it is a natural part of humanity, we must acknowledge our limits. We do not need to move into any blame games, because that does not help us. At this point, we need to do what is going to get us out of the Anthropocene. And so many people are doing that. I'm very enamored of this amazing philosopher and a computer engineer, Bernardo Castro. And there is this fantastic conversation he had with a former chief business officer for Google, Mo Gaudat. And they talk about how this overemphasis on growth, already Elsie talked about it, how it's a cancerous image. What is the price we'll have to pay for an iPhone 15? And then he talks, because unfortunately, Mo Gaudat lost a child, about the natural happiness of a child. And what is this return of investment versus the planet's limits? Is there any other way to grow? All right. So we grow up, we say we are growing up versus external growth. Now, since I write this blog, thank you, Laura, for mentioning it, it's called Stand Under the Mother Principle. That means, how does nature grow? Nature grows without identity and recycles us. It is not about more and more, but cycling and fractal difference. Now, there is a wonderful Kabbalist master, Zwiwish Shalom. He talks about growing down with the feminine. And this is what I mean by the contraction, going down within the depth of our being, depth of this planet that has the capacity to regenerate. But we are not separate from it. We have to do our part. Now, here I want to present something that I call the woman without gendering. The feminine principle is the living body of the cosmos. Now, the woman without gendering means that we are not this woman, this feminine principle, that is there everywhere, by the way, in both men and women. Okay. But woman without gendering means that we are not allowing the conditioning, the unconscious conditioning, to tell us this is what a woman is, this is what a man is. All right. And we connect with this living body of the cosmos. So, since this is a Magdalene seminar, who is Mary Magdalene? For me, the consort, the Shakti of Jesus, the masculine principle. The mother principle is beyond the masculine and the feminine because that's the void, the womb from where everything emerges. And every world's tradition talks about it in some form or the other. So now this very famous image you can see here, this contemplative Magdalene, this is a famous painting. She's holding a skull. Now, since I'm putting this tantric gaze into this image, this is this deepening, contemplative dissolution of identity into the void, the mother principle. How do we do that? We face two most powerful elements, which is death and sexuality. Now, everybody, these days, Magdalene is very popular. There are all kinds of theories, and for a good reason, women are entering that world and the suppression of sexuality as that, sinful aspect. But what the tradition I grew up with, and now the Gnostic path, it makes you face without any blinders, without any theories about it. And what happens as a result of these practices, that one can transcend both death and sexuality, which are two sides of the same coin, and the fear of these, into the kingdom of heaven that Jesus talks about, that is spread out in front of us. It's so ironic. So many places he says that it's spread out in front of us and we do not see it. So the kingdom of heaven obviously is not somewhere in the future, somewhere it is right here, right now. So in this broad tradition, the depth dimensions of religions, everywhere it speaks about that what we truly desire is ourselves in relation to the cosmos, our beloved, the other. We dance with the other. I talk about that we have created this kind of dueling dualities, men against women, women against men. Everywhere there is this, constant conflict model. But what about dancing dualities? I do not want to completely eliminate difference because that has not helped us, because this fake oneness does not help, because we have to experientially realize that. Now, the tradition, what it does, it transmutes the energies of lust and greed into luminous awareness. And this is a being but nothing into becoming. This is the language of my tantric teacher. He talks about how by entering into the womb through profound samadhi, you can come as your Buddha being or Christ being. Now, Mary Magdalene, in my studies, she is the anthropos, fully human, who has integrated the masculine principle. Jesus has done the same thing. Together, they create this thing called the anthropos, which is the original human, fully together and made in the image of divinity. Now, it is only since 1945, and it is also very interesting, right at the time when Europe, the powerful imperial force that devastated a huge part of the world, including my native country, India, through colonialism. But I also realized that was just barely 200 years in this huge, huge history of, so much knowledge, so much experimentation has happened, diversity of traditions, gods, goddesses, we worship trees, rivers, like the Native Americans here, right? So so 1945, this very important year, devastation of war, the fallout and a kind of disillusionment from the idea of progress. At the end of the 19th century, there was this heady excitement, excessive optimism that science and technology and industrial revolution will solve all our problems. And that's the root of our technotopia. I have written about that and published stuff that, so we have given up on something called heaven because, scientific atheism denies that. And we simply have changed and created a technotopia. But right at that time, these Nag Hammadi texts were discovered. Some of the texts were known earlier, but these forbidden, misrepresented, and misinterpreted gospels have started to change. And ironically, it is the same technology that is also allowing so many people around the world to actually read them, to be able to access knowledge Of course, it's also creating confusion, but that's perfectly fine. During churning times, during, in Indian mythology, we have fantastic stories about churning times when both deadly, poison and the nectar of immortality, though they both arise at the same time. So we have to recognize that. So Gospel of Truth, Gospel of Mary. Gospel of Mary was known before. I teach that in my goddess class. Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Philip. These are extraordinary texts. And I think I was reading, I think somewhere in dialogue with Elaine Pagels, who is a wonderful scholar of Gnosticism, that somebody who was a Buddhist practitioner had said that if I had known about these texts, the Gospel of Thomas, well, I didn't need to go to Zen. And I found that a very interesting comment. Now, here I have added one of my blogs, which was a Gnostic blog, which I wrote after the Notre Dame caught fire. So if you're interested, you can check that out to see how, where I talk a little bit more about this particular tradition. So in this tradition, we have texts. When these texts were suppressed, they were called, these are dualist texts. There are all kinds of confusion about it. Only now people are realizing that because the feminine was included in it, there's a father, mother, God, there's a father, mother, child, and they're powerful voices of the feminine. So here is a text that Elaine Pagel cites called The Great Announcement. There's an intriguing voice. From the power of silence appeared a great power, the mind of the universe, which manages all things and is male. The other, a great intelligence, is a female which produces all things. Now, this is a simple one quote. Already here I see a more Hindu-Buddhist male-female polarity in union. When the author explains, again, I'm quoting, these powers joined in union are discovered to be duality. This is mind and intelligence, and these are separable from one another, and yet are one, found in a state of duality. Pagels also notices that this dynamic relationship of opposites, a concept that may be akin to the Eastern view of yin and yang, but remains alien to Judaism and Christianity. Only to the exoteric aspect of these traditions it remains alien. Deeper I have gone into these traditions through my last book, when I Absent Mother God of the West, Kali Lover's Journey into Christianity and Judaism, I realized that no, Great Mother is there, the Black Madonnas of Europe, and some amazing stuff that I started to discover. And this is part of it. I realized that there is this call called the Brazen Cross. And again, there are all kinds of confusion and misunderstanding and fear connected with that. But this is the symbol of the order of the holy wisdom. It is very similar to the serpent power of Indic tantric ways. We call them Kundalini, the evolutionary power within us that transforms the ordinary human into the anthropos, or the Buddha being, or Christ being, or Devi in Indian tradition that is applied to all women. So these hidden wisdom, the esoteric traditions, and their roots in the Christian mysticism, many authors write about that. And there is this guy Struma who says, yet among the mature, we do impart wisdom, although it is not a wisdom of this age or of the rulers of this age who are doomed to pass away, but we impart a hidden wisdom of God, which God decreed before the ages for our glorifications. And there is paradox in it. We have to understand that simply, trying to find something certain and clear is not where this kind of truth. It's a paradox, the hallmark of this tradition. And here Ignatius writes, what is hidden is what is revealed. Now, the most characteristic trait of mystery is the fact that it is announced everywhere. So there is a tradition in Tantric, both Buddhism and Shakta Shaiva tradition. It's called Mahamudra is self-secret. That means you could be yelling and screaming at the top of your voice what that secret is, but people do not hear. So Jesus says in those texts, those who have ears can hear, those who have eyes who can see. Now, the Gospel of Mary. It is an extraordinary text. And every time I have taught that, I've looked at it. And I had a colleague I have a couple of colleagues who took my course. And they say, well, when we read this, it sounds so much like the Buddhist text. Every nature, every model form dissolves again into the own proper root, this dissolution of everything. But what is striking though, that Jesus actually says there is no such thing as sin. Rather, you yourselves are what produces sin when you act in accordance with the nature of adultery, which is called sin. Now, here we cannot go into literal meaning. This is which, for me, when we go against the depth dimensions of our own being, which belongs to every nature, it will set it within its root. So this idea root, the word radical is also connected with this idea of root. If we are radical, that means we are going into the root of our being, which is our connection with this entire cosmos. So he says, you get sick and die because we have accepted this deceptive aspect of us. But again, this is part of our being. We cannot deny that that part is, and this I have learned from my Gnostic teacher, who passed away a couple of years ago. That was a terrible shock to me, and it was very amazing how I even found her. I was just, again, if you read the Gnostic blog, you will learn more about her, since I won't have time to go deeper into it. But I discovered her, literally in my library, looking through the websites. It was a video on Carl Jung. So her name, Tau Rosamund Miller, a direct line of succession from Mary Magdalene. So miraculously, I found myself in her sanctuary one Sunday morning in California. I didn't even know that she was right there. And when during her service, she invoked the voices of thunder and Sophia, I was completely speechless and thunderstruck that there is such a tradition right here in the United States, where this divine feminine is being invoked and talking about the dance of the masculine and the feminine. But what was so shocking that in her middle name, I didn't know, she pointed out when she gave me her, her link, I saw her name was Rosamund Ikshwaku Miller. Ikshwaku is one of the most ancient, most revered lineage in India. Massive, massive, amazing connection with ancient India. And I'm writing about that too. So in her being, she inhabited all these traditions. She was also, connected with many, many other esoteric traditions, from Kabbalah to various other mystical paths. And she was also initiated into the Ramakrishna order. She had no religion, like my own tantric teachers. It is not about religion, it's about transformation. So she called herself an urban mystic who, while not necessarily pious or even religious, lives poised between the worlds, aware of the reality beyond opposites, awake and connected to the source, no matter what form the moment takes. So this is my late Gnostic maestro. Now, some of these texts are about dancing. I discovered the round dance of the cross, in which Jesus told us to form a circle and hold each other's hands, and he himself stood in the middle. This is a pure mandala. And then respond. I will play the flute, dance. The whole universe takes part in dancing. So there is this fascinating thing, and I started to discover amazing practicing scholars. And I put this book here by Jean-Yves Leloup. It's called The Sacred Embrace of Jesus and Mary. Now I see, and my teacher also, my tantric teacher, Kulavadhuta Satpurananda, who also says that it's like Radha and Krishna. The dance of Radha and Krishna, the dance of light and dark, these are also symbolic meaning. Black Kali and white Shiva, and dark Krishna and white Radha. These are all symbolic meaning, like yin yang. So I see this in this tradition, this profound dance that each one of us is capable of. So as I'm coming towards the end of it, if we have collectively entered the Anthropocene, collectively we can get out of it. So it's not just pollution outside, there's pollution inside. And by the way, that is the natural thing. We accumulate and we have to eliminate on a daily basis, right? So there is a psycho-spiritual pollution, which requires elemental cleansing. So elemental cleansing, all the elements in us, the earth, water, fire, air, and sky, and the practices that I do, which are very similar to the Gnostic chalices. My guru is also a Gnostic chalice holder. How do we understand the inner and outer elements? It is the how to where all the difficulties lie. So, what has happened though in this overemphasis on one sided look in the world, which was driven by fear, and there are amazing writers who have written about that. I don't know if some of you may be familiar with Ian McGilchrist. He's become, extremely popular. His book, The Master and His Emissary, where he talks about how we have become heavily left brain and have ignored the right brain. So extraordinary understanding from a psychiatrist, both a philosopher as well as a doctor. So we need to look at the totality of our psyche and see what has happened, this fear of what we feminize chaos. And a wonderful feminist theologian, Catherine Keller, calls it tehomophobia. Tehom, it's like a Hebrew word. And you can see in the earliest mythologies this fear of this uncontrollable, chaotic thing out of which we must put order. But see, actually, it is already ordered. We do not need a controlling mechanism here. All we need to do is attune with the wisdom of the cosmos. Then it is chaosmos. It's actually already both. It has this movement, which we call Shakti. It also has this quiescence. And this is where the tantric transmutation happens and the witness within arises, which all the world's traditions talk about. Now, so it is this well-being of the living system can be achieved together. And we can reach that thing that Robinson calls enough is a feast. Now, AI, what I have done, I have actually played with the word AI and I published an article in Theology and Science. I call AI as awakened intelligence. What if we look at AI slightly differently? AI is actually forcing us to look at ourselves fully together today. And this is because I teach science fiction also. There's a fantastic film called Her. I read that film from this Buddhist tantric perspective and also look at Kurzweil, who talks about singularities near and this AI takeover. But if you're interested, you can look at that. So we do not need to be afraid of AI, but we need to be aware of it. You all know Harari, another amazing historian and thinker, who is telling us that if we do not learn to go within ourselves, AI is already hacking our consciousness, and we know how all that works, and which any kind of looking at social media and how it affects us. If we are not aware and awake, well, definitely AI or whatever, whoever AI or whoever or whatever is controlling it, which is the unconscious part and fearful part of us, will definitely take over. So again, that whole thing in the beginning, as I said, do we go into this Anthropocene where we keep digesting more and more plastic and keep taking antidepressants, or we awaken to the fullness of our being? And this is the last slide, that meditation with Magdalene as a symbol of that wholeness. That is why she was the apostle to the apostles, which even earlier, some of the patriarchs recognize, that she can take us to the anthropos within, and that glorious quickening, which that red egg that she holds represents. And that's where we'll find a wholeness. That's how we'll find connection with this living cosmos and find the right way to act, rather than through unconscious desires that are not letting us see that kingdom which is spread out all over, all around us and within us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neela. This has been really, I have taken so many notes. I will be buying so many books that I have not bought yet about all these topics, because as you know, Women for Solutions is passionate about this topic, and I see we're gonna have Elsie and Neela again and again in these talks to further this amazing conversation. So I know there's a few questions in the chat, but I would rather have people ask them in live. So while we wait for these people to turn on their microphone, I would like to ask both of you, Neela and Elsie, if in the case of Neela, if you can tell us more about your opinion on how does the origin of the Black Madonnas in Europe and the Indian goddesses affect our current psyche to become more awakened, because what matters is today. And what I want to ask Elsie is more about to deep dive more about the GDP and social index, and how can we actually learn more about ourselves, but work towards, like, is there any country or city or municipality that has used these metrics of measuring progress through wellness?
Well, I think, Elsie, you should talk a little bit about your encounter with the Black Madonna. Then we
I
can,
knew you were going to pass that one to me.
yeah. We have a lot of that, but share that.
Okay, I will. So, I've alluded to the fact that in my business and personal practice that I moved away from being right in the thick of financial fundamentalism. That's where I started my career, on Wall Street and at McKinsey and in other applications of that. And it was heady and exciting and so clear. The prime directive was you maximize shareholder value. Let's go. And everybody was in the game. And I look at that and say, we need to create an alternative to that for people. Clarity, excitement, a place to bring all of your energy only with the goal of a thriving web of life. That's what's needed. So anyway, in my own personal evolution, I have been, and there are people in this room right now who have attended some of the retreats that we've led in sacred places. And the intention is always deepen the heart experience. As Neela said, abstract mentalism is really what feeds that machine, that old profit machine. So the notion of getting into the body and activating the heart and listening to the heart, to me, are where the action is. There's a lot of work being done in somatics, et cetera, today. Embodiment. So I happened to be at the tail end of one of these retreats and took the invitation from my friend to visit Kythera in Greece, where there is a shrine to the Black Madonna. And I had a calling, I think that we're in the realm of spirit, mystery, wonder, and the wonder of life, that if we're going to be authentically shifting all of our gears in that direction of the web of life, that we will have to feel it in an embodied way in order to get some momentum. And I had that experience on a pilgrimage to the Black Madonna in Kythera. In this form, the pilgrimage involves walking there several miles through the countryside, through winding roads. And Adrienne, I think, is on this call, and she did that with me a couple of years ago. And I walked into this church, and immediately I looked at this image of the Black Madonna, and tears and weeping just started coming out of me. My mind was not feeling sad. I was feeling so fulfilled. It was as if something that Neela refers to as pregnant nothingness. Imagine there's nothing that the eyes are seeing or the mind is seeing or the senses are experiencing except being in this infinite vastness. And so I spent, at least an hour literally weeping, and the friend who brought me there was kind enough to say, don't worry about it. I'll be outside until you're done. And I would say that that was a visceral experience, heart-centered visceral experience of what spiritual immersion or mysticism can do. And it changed me. Is that what you were wanting me to talk about, Neela?
Well, yes, because see, I grew up this pregnant nothingness Kali, right? And I wondered if that's not if that's not just a limited thing, but if it is reality, it's actual reality. So the black Madonnas all over Europe, which were suppressed and still people denied their reality, but they have this powerful impact of emptying what the tradition calls kenosis, self-emptying of the Godhead. These powerful figures have that capacity. But of course, the fear of blackness, fear of all that stuff. But I saw, since I read this Longing for Darkness, a fantastic book by China Galan, where she was disillusioned by her own traditions, extreme patriarchy. And by that, I don't mean patriarchy is a very deadly word, which is sometimes used against men, which I do not like at all. It is a system, it's a control mechanism. But these dark Madonnas, I went and saw. My last book begins with my seeing the one in the heart of Europe, right outside of Zurich. And said, this is very interesting. Pitch black Madonna and pitch black Jesus. So yes, Laura, there is, again, my last book goes deep, in detail about that. These figures where that both figures actually connect together. And these shrines are often created, where there were ancient mother goddesses of Europe lived, or, druidic. They're sacred sites like the Chartres Cathedral also. Many of these cathedrals, if you go to the basement, you'll find these black Madonnas. And I have talked about it. I have given, and women quietly will acknowledge them. Even in during conferences, scholars will not speak about it because then suddenly you will be branded. I didn't care, but I found they are all over Europe. They're healing figures, figures of totality. This is not a split figure where you create this kind of cleansed. By the way, the Virgin Mother, I deeply revere. Whatever, if you want to call the white, they are not white or black. They're symbolic meaning. She is also a powerful figure. So yes, the Black Madonnas are amazing, worth going to pilgrimage to check them out.
Thank you. So this means that we'll have to organize one on that soon about in Europe. And so this means that Kali, the goddess of India, that reveals all what you mentioned, has a relationship with Mary Magdalene. In history, there's theories that say that Mary Magdalene actually went to India.
Yes.
And Jesus went to India. Is there any relationship there? Is there any a relationship between the two? Or they just have similar principles because that's creator mother from time immemorial for humans?
Well, my research has shown India is full of the stories about their presence, mostly in esoteric circles, so they're not very well known. And it makes sense that these world teachers will travel. There are all kinds of different stories that are coming out, and fundamental research, unbiased research that are not theologically committed is needed. But I am interested in the symbolic meaning of them, because in the end, the transformation is within us. The fact, whatever the fact may or may not be, is in some ways irrelevant, except it unites all the world's religions together. That these masters, these yogi masters, both male and female together, they are everywhere. And they are there as our models. So we do not want to create exclusive understanding of this or that. But yes, the entire South Asia, and I have written about it, is full of lores of their presence and what they really mean. In the tantric lore, Jesus and Magdalene, their consorts, it's not the wife idea, is very complicated. I don't want to go into that. The yogini tradition, in order to transform, because it's not a belief system, it's a transformative system. And you cannot have that transformation without the feminine.
Thank you, thank you. I just want to see if there's any other questions that we can go.
I see a hand here. I think Christine has her
Oh,
hand again.
Christine, yes, Christine. And then there's another question somewhere else. I'll look for it in the written one. But Christine, go ahead, please.
Yeah, and thank you, Neela, and also, of course, thank you, Elsie, for these wonderful pieces of information. Maybe you can help me. Here's my question. If I think about Mary in connection with Jesus, I have a very strong picture of her being his mother. And so the mother-son connection, I'm mother to 3 sons, Elsie, huh? But I find that difficult in the whole context. Maybe you, Neela, can shine a little light on that. I can get close to it conceptually if I think about the masculine, feminine form and flow. And for generational, so not all the heavy systems that we discuss and we love to discuss because we so much want to get rid of it, but the natural systems, of motherhood and nurturing. I would not I actually skip my own words, cross that, not so much motherhood, but nurturing. Can you help me with better placing that in my heart, in my soul?
Yes, yes. You have put the most difficult problem that I
Well, I'm
see.
good at that, I'm paid for that. That's why I work with Els.
Yes, yes. And that's the crux of the problem. We all feel comfortable with motherhood, and that motherhood we put in a kind of box, in this good, nice, nurturing. No mother is this. Mother is a fierce form, right? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, it just came to me. I don't know how you reflect. This is totally new to me, but I think to place motherhood to box in or to pedestal motherhood was a very safe place for that energy. Okay, this is a new thought. Thank you.
Totally, I understand. Believe me, this is why I started this whole thing with my own mother, right? So the mother principle, I know what that is, and I'm a mother of 2 sons. All right, so I know what that relationship definitely is. But listen, this is what has happened in the world. When we have created that split image, the dualistic image, where we have separated, so there is this spiritual understanding of nourishing mother who takes care of everything, but we have completely denied, all right, that aspect. Now see, because I'm coming from a tradition where that split is not there, right? So the concert image, if we do not acknowledge the concert image, we will never understand the relationship. I have, in my experience, because I had this very powerful experience in a Greek island also, which was a very different experience, that these are, and again, this is there in the tantric tradition, that the mother energy and the consort energy are 2 sides of the same coin. We cannot separate them. We have to cleanse our psyches of the confusion we have created, because we think the sexuality is sinful. It is so deeply ingrained in the psyche of people. Believe me, I have done so many experiments. Women with PhDs think they are nothing but bodies, that the male is the spirit, male is the god, because the sexualized body of the woman, I also teach women's studies, it is deeply ingrained in the psyche. And that fear of the sexuality as, because it's a powerful energy. But that's what we have to transmute. And the Virgin Mary, I mean, again, the virginity, parthenogenesis, it is actually a state of being, which is a completely receptive, without any, see, when I talked about the woman without gendering, that's what the Virgin Mother represents. She represents that profound receptivity to the divine masculine. And that motherhood is the root mother principle, the womb from where everything arises. but the masculine and the feminine have to dance together as, this consort figure. I think somebody was asking the difference between the mother and the consort thing. It is the ordinary woman. There's a fantastic book by called Alone of All of Her Sex, where is this Marina Warner says that nobody can be virgin mother the way the church portrays this obedient. She's only one, because women, ordinary women, become mother through sexuality. So it's almost like we live, and I have done that in my classes. The students feel this split, right? It is like it's like you are schizophrenic all the time, as if you have to separate the big part of yourself that you think is body, right? Body, matter, bad, right? Mind over matter. Look at all the language we use, spirit over flesh. But then we are perpetually in that conflict mode. I'm not saying it is easy. The whole world has digested this ideology. Mother Earth, then extraction, exploitation of our own bodies, over sexualizing the female body, either excessive celibate stuff, which is misreading, or excessive indulgence, right? And it is creating severe mental health issues everywhere. Because unless
Well,
we
and system distortions.
totally, totally, because of that unconsciousness. Rosamond has taught me that how, when in Gnostic tradition, they talk about the demiurge, like this fake god, which is simply a projection of our mind, the control mechanism. And because sexuality is such an overpowering thing, the effort to control it, and we superimpose it on the woman, right? So then she becomes this epitome and of fear and everything. And women have been afraid. I have my, Elsie and I, very good friends with the anthropologist friend of ours, Frederick Apfel-Marglin, who's done incredible work. She said she was scared, or first when she saw this powerful Durga figure in India, she was literally stopped on her tracks. That figure would be seen in her tradition as the most horrible, sinful figure, and here is this woman being worshipped in a tradition. So see, there are a lot of things that were unconscious in my own mind. I took the mother for granted, but the consort, the India is full of them, and they are everywhere. But yes, until unless we cleanse ourselves through these practices of reaching the woman without gendering, we will never understand that the mother energy and the consort energy are two sides of the same coin.
Wow, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Neela. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's great insights. I have a question here for what do you feel are some challenges that prevent people from aligning their will with the web of life?
Elsie, do you want to take that?
I'll start with some, and Neela, then I know that you'll fill some in. Well, what causes anybody to not want to change? Right? I mean, who wants to change? We change when it's more painful to stay the way we are. That's the thing. And there's a lot of pain now. That's why this is a great time to come together in a focused way with an alternative. Neela mentioned Harari earlier, Yuval Harari, and he talks about right now, our civilization, if broadly speaking, is at a point where other civilizations have been too, where there's a breakdown, there's chaos, cannot rely on systems and processes that were familiar, and there's an unknown of where to go or what to do with it. And here we are sitting in a quote unquote poly crisis, and every day there's another wave affirming the chaos. It's tough. And in that situation, what does the psyche do? I'm not going to speak about this professionally, but it's looking for ground. We're looking for something stable to hold on to. And here come the autocrats. Historically, this is what happens. When there is a breakdown, when people's needs are not met for survival or stability or mental health, they are going to look elsewhere. And what's been offered to them is either more of the same or someone who thinks that they can fix everything. And part of that is this reaction toward autocracy and away from democracy, which is the opposite of what actually the living system requires: collaboration, inclusion. So I'd say fear. I mean, in short, I'd start with that. And the fact, I'm going to say, those of us who do hold the vision have not articulated it, shared it, presented it as an attractor, which is coming back to Bucky Fuller, who says, you want people to change? Show them something better. And I think that's really on our plate now. Show them something better and some idea about how to get there, which is part of what I was suggesting, the steps that we can take.
Right,
Neela?
right. Yes, yes. Now, see, this is why understanding the part in us that is a hungry ghost is very important. It's important to realize that there are this, when we are so afraid, things are changing, we are in this powerful flux. And then what happens, the part in us that takes, satisfaction in stuff, right? Suddenly you buy something and you temporarily feel good. And I do this experiment in my classroom, and the students say, yeah, almost immediately they're dissatisfied with it, because the hunger is for something else. The hunger is actually for something real. So the hungry ghost inside us is looking for that wholeness, looking for that connection with the entire web and the love. This is so ironic. Jesus talks about love all the time, but where is this love? How did this message got lost? Because transformation requires tremendous effort. And you're right, sometimes a terrible thing is going to force it. Why wait for something terrible to happen, right? But yes, together we have come to a point where, well, the earth will be fine, by the way. It's a powerful thing. We are going to destroy ourselves because we are the food, everything we have polluted. When I teach my food course, the students are absolutely horrified what we have done to our food system. We're destroying ourselves. So in order to really not just survive but thrive together, yes, we have to share together. We have to drop some of our fears little by little, taking tiny steps, nothing magnanimous. Every time we have imagined big, huge, what we call grand narratives, we're going to change everything, we'll reach in utopia, we create dystopias. So we need to take it, step by step. But yes, a quickening has to happen in each one of us and collectively.
Beautifully said, both of you. I think this is really a very important moment in our world for transformation because of the supposedly threats of AI, and but I like the idea of calling moving towards a transformation of a consciousness. We have a few minutes left, and I would love to hear from both Neela and Elsie. Tell us personally, how did you, what were the aha moments in your life that led you to all this love for Mary Magdalene, for the transformation, or what was the turning point as women, as human beings, to make that shift and look for something different?
Elsie, you want to go first?
Okay. Okay, there was a moment. Well, I always had an affinity with Mary, Mother Mary. And I think it's because my mother did. Mother Mary was very present in our home and in my mother's, in the consciousness. Not in a religious way. We were quite unreligious. I'm not a supporter of the Catholic Church, and I have a very intimate relationship with Mother Mary. So that was always there. And then again, at the turning point in my career, when I had reached a pinnacle of accomplishment and a pinnacle of an event, a pinnacle of accomplishment. And I woke up one morning in my Fifth Avenue apartment with ashes in my mouth. I tasted emptiness, death, not death of the spirit. And I was so despairing because I had worked for so many years to reach this level of success in the traditional way. And I was unsatisfied, just like you talked about, Neela, when your students, as the hungry ghosts, would get something that they wanted and it didn't satisfy them. Well, it was profound for me. And I knew I tasted the death of my spirit, my appetite for life. And I thought, I despaired a little bit and I thought, wow, this is everything I wanted. What else is there? If this doesn't work, what else is there for me? And I had this flash image of being in grammar school in first or second grade, 5 years old, when we would collect pennies and nickels to send to the missions, to the poor, what were referred to then as pagan babies. And I remember as a 5 or 6 year old child saying, why don't they have shoes? I don't understand this. This makes no sense, because I know the abundance of the world and I know the ingenuity of humans. And I know that, you know, moonshot, sure, we'll do it. Why would people not have shoes and clothes and food such that they had to rely on the pennies from me, a 5-year-old? And that is what resurfaced when I woke up that morning with ashes in my mouth. I said, I've got to do something about this. So that's at the point where I sold my house in the Hamptons. I put my Fifth Avenue apartment on ice, and I embarked on a sabbatical to Santa Fe, New Mexico, to write the economic argument for social responsibility. Now, I will tell you that also was old model, because I thought, well, data will persuade the leaders of these organizations to do the right thing. Wrong. And then gradually I had the realization that really it is this, what you referred to as abstract mentalism. I was in that loop, Neela, thinking that reason would persuade people to change. And I have come to appreciate it is the felt experience of our longing for belonging and our love of life and connectedness that will motivate the change that our civilization is facing.
Wonderful. So beautiful, Elsie. So my thing is a bit slightly different, Laura. I showed up on the shores of this country more than 3 decades ago. Crazy, crazy personal history. And I thought I was an English professor, but the gaze of patriarchal America only saw an oppressed third world woman. And the arrogant Kali lover in me, and they all said the mother god doesn't mean anything. You are an oppressed woman from this country, and thank God we saved you. And I said, what are you talking about? So every time I'll say, oh, well, it doesn't matter. And these men with lots of, and then I ended up at a Kali conference in Colombia and Barnard. And I said, what? There is a Kali conference? My Kali? It was a very personal journey. I would have never opened my mouth about Kali and what, tantric tradition I came with transmissions and all that. That's a whole other story. But there is a Kali conference happening. So I showed up there and I started asking questions. I say most of these scholars were, European, Euro-American men, just a few women. I said, what is going on? I have to say something about it. But that was the good thing. See, sometimes negative things provide positive results. So all the negative thing, people pitying me for coming from this whatever place. And then this yoga, tantra stuff started to explode. I started to slowly talk about the goddess and created the goddess course. And then the students in my classroom, once they started to hear me, these young 17, 18-year-old girls, recognizing that sexual revolution was not really freeing them, a whole bunch of other things started to happen. So it was very slow. I never thought I will talk about these things. And that itself brought me deeper into my roots. The first book I wrote was called In the Beginning is Desire, tracing Kali's footprints in Indian literature. that brought me back to India and look at the whole thing. And then, of course, it deepened my own practices, quest through my teachers. And then I was led to this powerful view. I said, well, let me look at, see, everybody goes to India for spiritual stuff. I'm doing the reverse journey. That's what happened in Absent Mother God and this continuous journey into Magdalene now.
Thank you so much. That was really amazing. I mean, there's so much wealth in this 2 hours. Generally, we do a 1 hour talk, but this has been amazing, in-depth, and very profound. So thank you all for your patience. I know we are now at the 1 hour. Thank you, Elsie. Thank you, Neela. This has been amazing. And I just have to...
Laura, I see there's one question from Arabella. She's been wanting to ask it. Could we possibly add that in?
I think it might be just a good last question because it's really a question to Laura. And I was wondering if you would just tell us a little bit about Women for Solutions and how this session relates to it. And is it just one-off session or is there like series or yeah, if you could just
Thank
put
you so much. Well, we started Women for Solutions over practically 6 years ago, and the whole idea was to inspire women and men towards a more caring economy. And so we identify simple, effective, existing and scalable solutions to help them scale even more so that we can move towards a more caring economy. That means to make the 4 principles of the caring economy that you saw in the little video that we started are the importance and the value of the care of the environment, the care of the work of care, the importance of a high quality learning, education from very early childhood to lifelong learning for everybody. And the 4th is metrics. Metrics is very important, so we try to create and understand what are the metrics out there on gender parity, on sustainability in companies. So we teach all these things in different ways. And regarding metrics, the next webinar that will be by Jamie Coates, he will talk specifically of a new metrics that Oxford University has called RISE. It's a metric that they have implemented in Brazil and other Latin American, Central American countries, where they can eradicate poverty by showing the government this is what's happening. And it's like a step above the Muhammad Yunus metric systems. It's all like a compilation of many metrics. So I think we're all moving towards that direction to measure, because whatever you measure, you can change and you can see that there is a problem and you can move forward. So we created a platform for advancing the caring economy. So a year ago, we realized that one of the things that we need to demystify is the concept of gender parity and where the essence of women come. And so we created, this is the number 9th webinar on understanding Mary Magdalene as a female prototype that 2,000 years ago, unfortunately for religious reasons or power reasons more than, as Neela said, for the patriarchal reason, it was kind of destroyed. But we are all coming up with understandings of what's in those ancient texts from the 1st and 2nd century, all the Gnostics. And imagine if our society would have accepted those that were very positive towards understanding the female principle that is in both men and women, follow through, this 2,000 years would have been a lot more richer in connections. Any other comments so that we can close with that?
Thank you for this opportunity, Laura, Elsie, Catalina, and all of you. Thank you.
So thank you, all of you, and thank you for your patience. So the next webinar is on April the 30th at noon, and it will talk about this new metrics. So we have analyzed many metrics for sustainability throughout all these 170 webinars. And these 9 webinars are specifically about Mary Magdalene and understanding where in history things went wrong, and to recover all that essence, spirituality that the female of a feminine version of men and women have, that we need to expand. That's about it. Well, thank you, everybody. And with this, we'll close the recording.